Welcome everyone to the MOWTalks, and we're beginning a new show, we can call it that, where we're gonna share snippets, small practical things that Papa Danny and things that would help us in practical living, supernatural lifestyle, things that would actually allow us to walk and live like kingdom people. So here we have David, it's Danny's son, and of course Papa Danny. He's the apostolic leader of Mountain of Worship. My name is Terry Nakoa, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Danny.
I've been a son and now I'm a father, but basically we started Mo, I guess, in 2003, but since that time, the Lord's taught us a lot. It's been really good. I pastored for many years and have found out more probably in the last few years than I ever did in those earliest days. So okay. It's good to be here. It's good to start this.
Thank you. Right now, we would like to know certain things, like things that would help us. So one of the first questions that I had, that the Lord put in my heart to ask you was, what is a secret place to you? And how is it a practical way that we can do that so that we can be able to have an intimate relationship with Holy Spirit? Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, early in my life, let me give you my journey a little bit. Early on, when I first began really wanting to grow in the Lord, I've known the Lord for a long time, but in my later teen years, I began spending extra time, more time, and eventually I was getting up very early in the morning and I would go out usually to a park, or if it was too cold or raining, I'd sit in my car somewhere at a park and first started praying. Then eventually I would take my guitar, and that became very much a part of my communication and communion really with the Father. And I began singing to Him, writing songs to Him, and that became a piece of my whole devotional life. I'm reading the Word the whole time while I'm there, daily, and it varied. There were times the Lord would have me in books. There were times where He would direct me to certain passages where I would feel, the Lord just saying, "Go here," and so there was both the discipline and the freedom, if you will. But I also became very aware of the fact that intimacy with Jesus is not sitting in a closet and just praying rote prayers and reading the Bible and nothing really mattering. You actually have to develop a relationship. And in relationship, if I was talking to you guys and just got said the same things every day, felt like, okay, it's our time. Let's sit down. Let's figure this out. There's no real relationship in that.
Right.
And so for me, what the Lord did was He began developing an intimacy that went far beyond the early morning hours. It was something that I've learned how to be silent. I've learned how to listen to His voice while there are other activities happening around me. It doesn't affect me. It's my communing place is not necessarily the quiet place. It's just the quietness of my heart in His place. And He is everywhere. So that happens sometimes in a car. It can happen. I thought about in the book of Acts where these guys were on the road. They were in prisons. They were everywhere. They go take a quiet time. They didn't even have Bibles. They weren't carrying scrolls around the countryside. And what Jesus demonstrated, He wasn't carrying scrolls either. Now, obviously, He knew the Word because He was the Word, but His time with His Father was intimate time with the Father. And it was in the midst of relationship with even other people that He learned He could commune with God in all of those things.
Okay. Well, as you were talking, I wanted to ask you another question. Like, how did that discipline become pleasure? Because obviously, as you were talking, it has become a pleasure.
Terry, that's kind of a funny question to ask me. Yeah, because I normally, when I tell this story, I talk about how, I read a bunch of books. Yes. I learned, John Wesley, I think it was, he said something like, unless I pray for 4 hours, I'll never accomplish everything all day. So I was like, okay, so I need to go pray for 4 hours, first thing in the morning, early, and wee hours of the morning. And I found out that, man, I could fall asleep in any position. I mean, I'm not joking. I mean, I was like, I'm sitting in my car, it's probably 23 degrees, I'm freezing, I don't have the car on because I want to stay awake, and I'd fall asleep in the car, trying to just spend time with God. And it wasn't easy. It was really hard. It was like, what is this? I don't like this. And eventually, honestly, during that time, probably many times, I quit. I just like, forget this. I'm not gonna worry about this. I need to learn. And the Lord taught me, he said, the communion comes out of the relationship, comes out of the walk. That when Jesus walked with his disciples for 3 years. He never sat them down and said, no, he did say, pray with me for an hour. He did teach them how to pray. But it's a very small part. He actually taught them to do everything. And in the process of teaching them, he says, I only do what I see my Father do. I only say what I hear my Father speaking. And you go, when did the Father speak to you?
Yeah, exactly.
When did he speak to you?
Exactly.
But he lived in relationship. He lived in communion. He lived in that. So he's constantly listening, constantly hearing the voice of the Lord. So to me, when it became fun, if you will, it was when I began realizing that my time with the Lord is so important to him. It's actually more important to him than it is to me. He will intrude in my daily walk all the time without producing guilt, shame, and condemnation on me. He comes in, and all he's wanting me to do is notice him there. And when I notice him there, I engage him there. You're here. I can feel your presence. My kids are sitting around, but I can feel you here, Jesus.
Wow.
We can be anywhere. We can be at the beach. We can be wherever. And we have limited. We've basically separated our spiritual walk with the humanity. But Jesus actually didn't do that. Jesus brought humanity into the divinity. That both were vital, both were very important. God understood humanity. And so he taught that to his disciples.
Well, for us beginners, right? For us beginners, how can we begin to reach that stillness? What kind of breakthrough? Because you remember the first time you had a breakthrough and you reached that level of stillness. Us as beginners, what can we do to be able to reach that so that we can be able to do that in every other areas? Now, how is there some way that you can simplify it for us to be able to do something practical in the beginning so that we can build up to that level?
I think it's a skill of listening. I was just with Surprise Satoli 2 weeks ago, and he said that the Lord right now has him on this very interesting journey where the Lord said, I want you to learn to listen.
Yes. Wow,
and he says, my day is so busy. He said, if I get up at a normal hour and try to listen then, everything comes in. Everything floods. I need to do this today. I need to do this today. I need to do this today. And so what he's done is I guess he sets his alarm. He didn't tell me this, but basically he gets up at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And spends an hour listening. That's what he does. Because he can't do anything in the middle of the night anyways. You can't call people. You can't, you don't want to wake up the rest of the family by doing things. You just have to be undistracted. And to me, the skill of listening is actually a much greater skill than praying.
Wow.
Because
really good.
You can't...
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah. The skill of listening is far more significant and meaningful in your walk with God than the skill of praying.
Wow.
People pray. And we've taught a generation to pray, and they keep praying.
Right.
And it sounds sometimes, to be bluntly honest, it sounds like what Jesus said don't do.
Right.
Like the heathen. They say these things thinking that by their many words they're going to be heard. To me, I've even pictured Elijah on Mount Carmel and what happened there with the prophets of Baal. And it's amazing to me. You watch the prophets of Baal and Ashtoreth. It was 850 of them. And they're doing, it scares me, but they're going, God, come. God, show up and I'm going, whoa,
Yeah.
I've seen this. I've seen this in the church today.
Yes.
People getting so intense and like
Yes.
they're trying to make God, they're trying to
Yes.
manipulate, they're trying
Yes.
to move God by their emotion.
Yes.
And that's not what moves God.
Right.
God has never been moved by our emotion.
Yeah.
He's moved by our place. He's moved by the reality. He's compassionate. He's
Right.
empathetic. He cares. That's why he sent Jesus. And so he understands that part. But to me, we become a generation that has learned how to talk a lot.
Yes.
And we can preach a lot. We can pray a lot. But listening, whew. And so I think the skill of listening is just saying, Holy Spirit, speak to me.
Wow. It's really good.
And then wait for him to speak to you.
Wow.
You just have to wait.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's small.
Yeah.
It's very tiny. It's the nuance. It's like the flavoring of God. That's the best way I can put it. It's like he comes in, it's like, oh, I smell it. I know this. I can feel this. Yes, he's here. Listen, what's he saying right now?
Wow.